Okay, welcome everybody to the January 2025 Guide to Advancement uh, updates that we're going to look at for our advancement seminar today. And so our main presenter is going to be Carol Steve, and so she's going to go about here and look at and highlight the all the different changes that came out in the brand new 2025 updates for our Guide to Advancement. So Carol, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Pat. There were a lot of changes. A lot of the verbiage was expected with the change to calling the unit Scouting America. So that, of course, has been substituted just about everywhere. And a lot of changes in the term used in many sentences from should to must. So a lot of things that were highly encouraged are now actually required, along with other, somewhat substantive changes. Oh, good. I can't talk either tonight. Okay. This is page 2 to the Guide to Advancement. This is not changed from previous guides, but has things that I think people just really skip over. So I wanted to highlight that. One of the big things is advancement has no additions or subtractions to requirements. They have to be done the way they're written. And that is not true for the special needs piece. But in general, we're talking about average advancement. They have changed, as I've said, the word must. Must appears in a heck a lot more places than it did previously. For all things, the Guide to Safe Scouting applies. And I think a lot of people overlook the fact that that also includes any kind of project, Eagle Project, Summit, Quartermaster. Who's the unit leader? That's a very specific term and refers only to the Cub Master, Scoutmaster, Venturing Advisor, Sea Scout Skipper, or Lone Scout Friend. And how is a month defined? And this comes up a lot of times when you're looking at requirements for service or spirit or position responsibility. A month is a month. It's not defined as a certain number of days. So it doesn't matter whether it's February a month or October a month. It's a month. So this is actually part of the Guide to Advancement. It highlights the significant changes. The parts in red I added. One of the things that has been clarified is that if a scout has been tested and signed off, that can't be rescinded. Of course, it has to have been signed off by someone who's approved to do so, and we'll talk about that more a little bit later, but they have added the words cannot be rescinded. There is a new policy and section that's been added to deal with group and online instruction. And of course, the ever popular artificial intelligence, which keeps coming up in a number of places. And an entirely new section on online merit badge classes. They did, and you'll see this 804.1 and 901.8 are actually the same. A lot of the Guide to Advancement repeats information in various places. And that has to do with the appeals process for Eagle Scout rank. There is a new process for the way Eagle Scout references are handled and a change to the number of references. So there is also a new application for Eagle Scout that goes along with that. And then the entire section on the members with special needs has been totally reorganized and rewritten. And it gives a lot more clarification and I think some really good examples. I added the one at the bottom because I kind of consider that significant, and they have changed the verbiage that a scout must talk to their unit leader about a merit badge, whether it's a group or virtual or whatever it is, before they start it. And there is some repercussions if they don't do that. And we'll see those a little bit later. So these were the highlights at a very high level. Some of what I have on additional slides may not be totally new, but are areas that we get a lot of questions about or clarification. We don't want to overlook the Cub Scout program, noting that it starts on June 1st, unless their school hasn't ended by June 1st. So it's really key to the school year for the Cub Scouts. So if they don't end till June 10th, then that's the end of that particular rank. They cannot go
Can I ask
backwards.
one question real quick?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt. When you, the slide before, when you talked about the Eagle stuff, my
Yeah.
daughter is in the middle of her Eagle process. So do things change for her, or is she kind of already okay where she's at?
So, and there we will talk about Eagle later on, but specifically for that, the workbook she's using should have been current at the time that she started it.
She started in October maybe of 2024, the workbook.
Which is fine. That workbook will suffice. They won't need to, I mean, that's current for her. However, she will need to use the new application when she gets to the point of filling that out. And I will tell you, and what we can look at it, the only difference in the new application is the number of references and who can be a reference. The rest of the application is the same.
Okay, because she already sent out her letters to people to be references.
I'm gonna say, I don't know what district you're in. Do you?
We're in Five Creeks.
Okay, so
Jack.
yeah, that's Russ, and he's the advancement chair. I'm sure he'll be flexible with what she turns in, but we'll talk about references in a little bit, and then maybe you'll have another question to go with that.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure. So the only real change in advancement, if you will, for Cub Scouts is the fact that Webelos is now included with the other ranks in terms of who can sign off on advancements. So the parent and guardian can sign off on Webelos requirements that are done outside of a den meeting. Only Arrow of Light now requires only the den leader to do approvals, which mirrors the process for Scouts BSA. So which is really what that is supposed to be. It's preparation for them to move into Scouts BSA. Again, each rank has 6 required adventures and 2 electives. Bobcat's designed to be the first one, which it really makes sense to do in September or August, whenever they resume, and leave summer and day camps things for electives. So not a lot significant when it comes to Cub Scouts. And then we have Scouts BSA. Most of this I've tried to highlight in blue, the actual verbiage change from prior guides. So they are starting to put more interpretation is what I'm going to say around some of these requirements. So as far as who can sign, again, the unit leader has to approve who can sign. So the person who can sign off on Scouts BSA requirements for rank have to be authorized by the unit leader. And it can be other assistant scoutmasters. it can be youth of a certain rank or a certain age, but it is up to the unit leader to approve who can do that signature. It is preferable than someone other than the scout's own parent do it, but it is not disallowed. So again, they have added clarification that if a scout is registered to multiple units, the primary unit leader is the person who gets to make this decision. And in general, although I can't swear that this happens 100%, the primary unit will be the one where they pay their registration fees. But again, that's a discussion among the affected scout and the leaders. So people who can sign off, as I indicated, could be an assistant unit leader, another scout. This section here is new. Other non-direct contact leaders like committee members, committee chairs, unit scouter reserves, college scouter reserves may not test or pass scouts on rank requirements. And that's new. I think it's interesting that they specify that because even your non-contact leaders, if they're registered, have to have youth protection and those things, but this is what it is. So this is the other piece they added. Once a scout's been tested and signed off by someone approved to do so, the requirement has been met and cannot be rescinded. We do get a lot of questions about active participation requirements, that they need to be active to achieve a certain rank. What they've added to this for clarification is that there have to be documented expectations that were communicated in advance. So this can't be after the fact saying, oh, well, little Johnny hasn't been here for the last 3 meetings and he's only been here half the time. And, we don't think that's reasonable. But if that's not been documented as a policy for that unit and communicated, that is not reasonable and they can't be expected to meet that. They've clarified that time that other scouts spend on Eagle service projects must be allowed as their own service hours. And same thing for positions of responsibility. There need to be documented expectations in order for the scout to know if they've met expectations. After the fact, you can't say, you've been the scribe for 6 months, but we don't think you really did your job if they were never provided with a job expectation. So a lot of clarification around these things that have been really kind of open to interpretation. They also clarify that if the unit takes time off during the summer, that time still counts for service in a position of responsibility. You can't say, oh, we didn't meet for 3 months, so you haven't, completed your 6-month expectation. That resides with the unit. So a little bit of clarification with the Scoutmaster Conference. They need to have one. It's not a test. There's nothing new about that. You don't really pass. It's supposed to be a discussion. And in general, I think a lot of them are held after all the requirements for that rank have been completed, but that is not required. It does not need to be the last step before the Board of Review. And again, they clarify that, the Scoutmaster can do a conference with their kid or a relative, but they recommend having an assistant unit leader over the age of 21 do it. And in part, and we'll see this in the Merit Badge program too, is to give the youth an opportunity to talk to different adults. That's a life skill that I know, and I'm sure Tom knows from taking phone calls from scouts, they haven't all mastered. So these are all opportunities for growth for the Scout. Not to forget our friends in Venturing and Sea Scouts. And most of the requirements already mirrored Scouts BSA. They may maintain dual registrations, but advancement should be tracked through one unit. And they should agree on that. So between the two leaders and the Scout, there needs to be agreement on what's primary, who's primary, and where advancement should be tracked. Any questions before I move on to the fun stuff with lots of words? Okie dokie. So technology, we know from our everyday lives, technology's gotten just more pervasive. And this section did exist in the old guide. This whole last half of it is brand new. So for the sake of our eyes, I did not make the whole section blue, but they are strongly encouraging in-person participation. So if it says attend a meeting, you should be attending that in person, unless there is some extenuating circumstance. And for something like that, like citizenship in the community requires attending a council meeting of some kind, the merit badge counselor must approve doing it virtually, and that must be done in advance. So that's new. They have also really gone into detail, and this part actually exists in several places in the new guide to advancement, defining the fact that discuss means it's a conversation. It's not filling out a worksheet. They can fill out a worksheet as a tool, but the actual requirements that say discuss requires a conversation. Explain needs to be more than a sentence. There needs to be, it could be written, but it needs to be an actual explanation. And demonstrate means you really have to do the activity in the presence of the counselor. I mean, there may be some things, you know, say you have a snow sports counselor and you could have someone video you skiing or whatever the thing is. But it needs to be clear that you have fulfilled the requirements exactly as written. And then, of course, we have AI. And, you know, some of AI, I don't think we feel like we've called it AI, spell checkers and grammar checkers. But there's websites now where you can go put something in and have a whole paragraph generated for you. They can use it to assist with requirements, but they need to let the person know who's looking at their work that they've used a tool like that. And the output still has to be the Scout's own work. It can't be copied from a website kind of thing. So I think in this guide to advancement, Scouting's trying to get, you know, up to speed. And then we have merit badges. So some units have been known to restrict what badges kids can work on by age or the number of badges they could work on. None of those things are aligned with the guide to advancement. Any registered Scout can work on any requirement for any merit badge at any time. However, before working with a counselor or a group or virtual, the Scout must meet with their unit leader or their delegate. So that must is new. And the delegate. And certainly the unit leader could delegate this responsibility to an assistant scoutmaster or whomever, you know, for whatever reason. And certainly in bigger units, they may have leaders that are responsible for certain things. So that's appropriate. The meeting is required as part of the merit badge process. And it's documented by the signature on the blue card or in Scout Book Plus, and they do allow, leave that window open for another method. The guide still talks about the blue cards. That is certainly not a required piece, but a lot of units still use them. Particularly units that are, for whatever reason, not using the Scout Book Plus application. But in any case, it has to be documented that they met with the unit leader. And I think earlier I said there's repercussions. So that's that blue section in the middle. If they ignore this and complete a badge without talking to the leader, and they continue to do this, the Scoutmaster does not have to allow the merit badge to be recorded as earned until the scout has demonstrated, told, whatever, with a merit badge counselor that's acceptable to the unit leader. So they've tried to give this measure some teeth. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens, but they're not saying, at least they don't, I mean, there is recourse for the scout to earn the badge, but they need to follow the process. They do point out that scouts that earn merit badges from only a small number of counselors or only from counselors known to them, again, rob them of the opportunity to learn and grow. And merit badge counselors can work with their own children or relatives, but again, association with adults is one of the methods of scouting, and it's better for the scout to reach out and work with people they don't know and hone those phone skills and the ability to deal with strangers. So, and along that line, we've had units that try to keep all their merit badges in-house, so to speak. And as the advancement committee, we are going to be moving forward with some restrictions about the number of required merit badges a merit badge counselor can have, along with the total number of merit badges they can have. Scouts need to really have the opportunity to make these adult associations. So again, there's a process for merit badge counseling. And again, a lot of these sentences are the same. They've just put the word must into them. So must be scout initiated. It shouldn't be the parent. Ooh, well, now I don't know how to go back. Oh, there we go. I have a relatively new computer and apparently waving at it's not a good idea. Okay, there we go. No, where am I? There we are. All right, so they should be at an appropriate location. In-person meetings are preferred. And now they're asking the counselors to confirm with the scout they've discussed this with their unit leader. The merit badge process itself has a number of steps outlined in the Guide to Advancement, which are all the same as previous, except number 6. So they are very clear here that for a merit badge meeting with a counselor, with a single scout, the parent or guardian can meet with the counselor, and that's acceptable. However, in a group setting with 2 or more scouts, there have to be at least 2 registered leaders. And I think generally merit badges that are done at a troop or a merit badge event, there's always 2 registered leaders. But in the past, it was acceptable for a scout to say, come with a buddy. That's no longer acceptable. There has to be 2 registered leaders if there's 2 or more scouts. And now this section on online merit badge classes, completely new. And it's pretty specific that the council may implement guidance. Now, we haven't done that as a council yet. These requirements, this guide just came out. So we haven't really discussed it, and I don't know, where we'll go with that. And there are certainly reasons to do a virtual option, whether it's a medical condition or a merit badge with very few counselors, maybe not somebody local. I mean, in PTAC, we don't generally have that problem because we are so big, but it is a consideration. So a couple guidelines on online merit badge classes. They can't just register and log in. They have to be engaged. They have to complete all the requirements exactly as written. There are no dispensation for having an online class. If it says demonstrate, they have to demonstrate. Chat options should be disabled. That's to prevent one-on-one contact. Cameras should be on, and a parent or guardian has to be present with a scout. And again, if it's show or tell or demonstrate, each attendee must do those things in order to earn the merit badge. And I think that's where, there's been a lot of skepticism about some of these online classes, just because if you're got a class of 20, I don't know how you do that, regardless of what the merit badge is. I found this interesting. This is in the new Guide to Advancement. It's kind of a really pretty straightforward grid of what they're looking for as being a good online class, as opposed to something that maybe is not as good or should be avoided. So they've got a lot of stuff in here. And it's not just about the number of scouts, obviously, but also what does it cost and why does it cost what it costs? And, about any of the requirements and to make sure that everything is addressed. So this Guide to Advancement has a lot more clarity to it. So board's review. So one of the things is there is a timing when it comes to the board of review, but they're very clear now that they should happen promptly, and they shouldn't be delayed for anything that's unrelated to the rank advancement. There are some issues with units that don't want to hold a board of review if the scout hasn't paid their dues, or they're not in uniform, or other extraneous things. That is expressly not allowed. And this was interesting because I've never had this come up, but they're very specific that you should never conduct a practice board of review at any level. I've never had a practice board of review, or anybody even think about that. Tom, I don't know if you've had one.
I've never had one.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. I mean, a lot of these changes and revisions come from questions that have been submitted to the National Committee. So apparently this is a problem somewhere. Composition of the board of review. So again, we're back on the must word. The old guide said should. This says must. So things that I think we all know, unit leaders and assistants should not be on the board of review. Must not now. Relatives must not. And the candidate or the guardian or relatives, parents cannot have a part in selecting any of the board of review members. And the board must not reject candidates for reasons relating to uniforming, as long as they are clean and neat in appearance. And yes, scouts usually show up in uniform, but apparently that is the reason some places have rejected them. One of the things that comes up, fortunately, not terribly often, is appealing a rank board review decision. And they have clarified that if it's an adverse decision for Star and Life, that can be appealed to the local council. And the National Committee is only available for advice. They don't get involved in a Star or a Life appeal. Adverse decisions for tenderfoot, second class, and first class are not appealable. You know, I honestly have had involved in someone who wanted to appeal one. So I think it's good to have that clarified. And the National Council only reviews appeals for the Eagle Scout rank. And then they go on to clarify that if there is a denial, that the scout should receive communication within 2 weeks of the denial. There previously wasn't really a time frame around this, and I feel like things probably dragged out. So they've now defined this as 2 weeks, and then the scout or the scout parent can submit within 2 months of receiving the letter that documents the denial. So they've really just put time parameters around that. Probably so things aren't hanging out for a year or 2 years. Because honestly, if it's depending on the rank, I mean, that could impede their further progress. So I think that's a good thing. And then we have the Eagle Scout rank. So there is a new application. It must be used. It only has a spot for 4 references now, and it's removed the labels on the references. So they're literally 4 blank lines. We'll look at it once I get this off the full screen. So you want to list 4 people who are willing to serve as references. They may be scout leaders, teachers, employers, coaches, other scouts. References do not need to be 21 or older. Parents and other relatives are strongly discouraged from serving as references. The current unit leader and committee chair are not eligible to serve as references. The signature on their application is their endorsement. So that's what's basically changed around the application. In fact, everything else on the application is the same. And then there has been a change to the process for requesting the letters of reference. The scout is now responsible for requesting references from the 4 people on the application. And in the past, there was a little variability about that. Most all of us, the scouts were requesting them anyway. But now they kind of put the ball back in the scouts' court. So if after diligent effort, 4 recommendations are not received, the board of review can go forward without them. If the scout chooses to go forward, the board may ask about their efforts, but may not deny advancement based only on lack of references. Now, I mean, I occasionally don't get 5 or 6 now. In fact, I have 1 scout right now. I have none 4, despite asking repeatedly. So that's going to be another phone call. But this is a change. So Jennifer, when you had said she had already asked for references, I don't imagine that they'll disallow something that came from I mean, they'll probably, if they get one from a parent or a scoutmaster or whatever, but I think that hopefully she's got at least 4 on there that are not the scoutmaster, committee chair, or a parent or relative. You're nodding yes. So I think she's fine. Time extensions. So we do still get requests for these. Time extensions of 6 months or less are handled by the Council Advancement Committee. They are now changed, or I would say add verbiage to make this very clear that the application must be sufficiently detailed that it can be reviewed without other information. I think that's interesting because I would say 80% of the applications we get do not have enough information. And we spend a lot of time going back and forth requesting additional information. The form is not filled out completely. 100 other things. So, and the other thing they clarify again, that under no circumstances are time extensions available to scouts who have not earned the rank of life. So these can only be applied for by a Life Scout. They do also add the section that I circled in red. A time extension is rarely the best remedy for a scout with a special need or disability. Nearly all advancement can be overcome using accommodations or getting permission for modifications. But it's mostly for disabilities that significantly slow progress in general. And then registration beyond the age of eligibility is a better solution. And that also allows them to work on any rank. It's not just for Eagle. So that's not limited to like Life Scouts. So that's a super good lead in to the next section, which is the new section that's been rewritten for special needs scouting. So before I move forward, any questions? Okay, so advancement for members with special needs, completely rewritten. And in a seminar like this that is addressing all of the advancement, really not the time to be able to get into the nitty-gritty of every change and every requirement. So I picked the highlights and the things that I found valuable. Basically, flexibility is allowed. There is limited flexibility and accommodations that are available to each program. So this is applicable to Cub Scouts, to Scouts BSA, to Venturing, to Sea Scouts. The first one is accommodation. So accommodation changes how the requirement's completed without changing the requirement itself. And this can be done at the unit level. It doesn't require extra documentation. It doesn't have to be sent to anyone for approval. The unit can do an accommodation. Now, then we have modifications. So if an accommodation won't suffice, then a modification would be the next step, which is changing the requirement itself or substituting one requirement task for another. And those modifications are not permitted at the unit level. They do require approval in advance, and they come to the Council Advancement Committee to be approved. And we've had a few of those over the years. I know years ago, and this was before there was much regulation around it, my unit had a scout that had a neurological condition that didn't allow him to swim or to bike. So for those requirements, we were able to do hiking, since when it comes to Eagle required merit badges, hiking, swimming, or biking are part of the same, alternatives for each other. And that scout actually was eventually became an Eagle Scout. So this is now modification, which would require approval of the Council Advancement Committee. Scouts with special needs have to complete all merit badge requirements as written. No substitutions for individual requirements are allowed. The solution to that is a request can be made again to the Council Advancement Committee for an alternative merit badge. And there's a process for that and a form for that, just like there's a form for just about everything. They did this nice little chart, which compares an accommodation and a modification. And they do make the point that modifications are rare. And really basically compare it to changing how the scout is learning or doing the requirement, as opposed to what they're learning. And so some things, a lot of the things we hear about involve swimming. So there could be an accommodation for extra time or different time of day or other things. or a substitution of the merit badge, which is then a modification. And again, the unit can approve an accommodation. The Council Advancement Committee has to approve a modification. And you do need documentation. There's a ISAP, which is the Individual Scout Advancement Plan, an application for alternate merit badges. They require physician documentation. There's a lot of paperwork that goes with this. And then there's the registering members beyond the age of eligibility. So this would be youth members and adults who are disabled in a way that make it very hard for them to learn or perform. And they're considered based on the, you can do it for Cub Scouts or for Scouts BSA or for Venturing or Sea Scouts. Normally, it's expected that youth with only moderate learning disabilities or disorders such as ADHD can complete standard requirements. And registration beyond the age of eligibility is not appropriate for most type of disabilities or moderate levels of learning, developmental, or intellectual disability. And again, there's a bunch of forms that go with this. So I started to put a resource page together. In this top one is the one from the Guide to Advancement that links to the disability website. We do have a disability special needs committee here in the council, and they often, we have a representative on our advancement committee, and they often, weigh in on these issues. And each district should have their special needs scouting champion that can help answer questions or look at particular situations. The second link is literally to our council website. And if I can get out of this, let's see how this goes. Okie dokie. Oh, wait a minute. Can you, oh no, it says my screen sharing is paused. And why would that be? Oh, I think it's the way the screen got shared. Okay.
While you're fixing that, Carol, let me just add to the fact that the Special Needs Committee has reviewed the changes in detail and it reviewed them. And so each of the champions should be up to speed totally on what the details are of those changes, which are considerable.
Great. That's good to know. All right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Excellent. So this is literally from our council website. If you go to resources and advancement and Eagle, these are the resources under Eagle, and they link to the national site. So when I click the Eagle rank application, this is the brand new application. You'll see the section here in the middle has the spot for 4 references. The rest of it is literally identical, but it has the, December 2024 revision on it. There is nothing else I can see that's different on here. It's literally just this 4 reference issue. And the extension form is linked here. Project workbook. I don't think the Guide to Advancement is here, but I'll add that link to that page for, because I think when they post this, they put the slides up with it also, or we can send the slides out. And then there's as far as special needs go, there's certain forms for that also. All right. Any questions? We've met my goal of under an hour, so,
Great job, Carol.
oh, thank you. Jennifer, you have any additional questions, any feedback? Jennifer's on mute. She's waving. I'm not sure what that means, but,
Hold
There we
on,
go.
I'm good.
oh, okay.
My screen did something wacky.
I can sympathize with that.
I think I'm good. I'm advancement chair for our two troops, so that's really why I wanted to jump in and see all the changes. So,
Yeah, I
but thank
really
you.
wish we'd gotten, more participation. So I think we're gonna have to post it and, you know, I mean, I try to promote it at like our district meeting and that kind of thing, but you said two
Right.
troops?
Yeah, I have a B&G, and then I have a daughter, a son, both in B&G with the troop, and then I have a Weeblo one with the pack. And Thursday they always do a lot of pack, either pack nights or meetings. So Thursday sometimes hard for webinars for our pack.
And it makes sense. And honestly, a lot of, Cub Scouts is different in that the mandate is to do your best.
Mhm.
And so most advancement, most requirements, they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to meet a certain standard.
Right.
And that really differs from Scouts BSA. So there's a lot more flexibility when it comes to Cub Scouts.
And we just actually had our committee meeting, and that one of the questions was, what does active participation mean
Ah, now that does apply.
within the troop? So, it was interesting to see like how that's in there now and
Mhm.
go back to the committee with that.
Yeah, and I would go in, obviously, I was just pulling highlights. I would go in and read that section so because you'll get people that'll ask stuff that's, that, may not have been directly covered. But I
Right.
think the intent is there and the tone of what they're saying. And it most often for me and the committee actually comes up with Eagles, but, Eagle candidates. Because the kids are so busy as they hit high school and
Oh yeah.
between sports and other things, debate, theater, music, whatever it happens to be, um, just things conflict. They're not available, or it doesn't really negate that. There are alternate, they have to be offered. There's 3 tests around that, and they have to be offered an alternate. But it is also that the unit needs to have something clearly defined if they're going to want to penalize people for it. So I think this is good. It's clear to me that there's been a lot of thought given to the guide to advancement and in improvements and changes in it. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
Oh, you are welcome. Tom, you have anything you want to add?
No, we'll have discussions throughout our districts about the changes, and I'm going to promote the availability of this recording heavily. I mean, I promoted it in advance, but it's the middle of the week, so people are doing other things. We understand that.
Right.
But I think it's important that there is a lot more specificity in this, and I applaud these changes. I think they're very positive, and some wiggle room, but should is not as good as must in a lot of cases.
I completely agree with you. All right, then. Well, thank you all for attending. And it looks like Pat's still not quite out there, but hopefully when we all hang up, it'll stop for him. Thanks. And you guys have a great rest of your night.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.